Hello and welcome. You're watching News Center. I am Ashmit Kumar. Help is on its way. That was the US President Donald Trump's message to protesters in Iran. In a social media post, Trump encouraged Iranians to keep protesting. He wrote, and I quote, "Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price." Trump said that he has halted diplomatic engagement with Tehran until the killing of protesters stops. Later, in a conversation with CBS, Trump vowed very strong action against Iran. Iran's UN ambassador accused Trump of encouraging political destabilisation and inciting violence in the country. As per a US-based human rights activists news agency, more than 2,500 people have been killed in the unrest in Iran, over 90% of whom were demonstrators. The agency also reported that over 10,000 people have been detained and one protester is facing imminent execution. Mobile phone services have resumed, but internet remains cut off for more than 5 days now. The Indian government has issued an advisory asking Indian nationals to leave the country by available means of transport. Now, to help take this discussion ahead as to what the options are that Donald Trump can unpack and what that translates into as far as New Delhi is concerned, to help us answer some of these questions is with us former diplomat Anil Trigunath and strategic affairs expert Anju Gupta. Ms. Gupta, Mr. Trigunath, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Trigunath, let me come for you. Donald Trump has been issuing tweet after tweet whereby he's assuring the protesters in Iran of support, saying that help is on its way, saying that keep a track of everyone who's been harassing you, that they will pay a heavy price. Tehran will pay a heavy price. Are these realistic assertions coming in from Donald Trump, or is it merely at this point perhaps wind being directed in the direction of Tehran to ensure that there is unsettling of the regime, so to speak?
In facing a very severe crisis, which is both economical and political. And this has been further compounded by President Trump's tweets and his statements that he has been making against the regime and in favor of the protesters. That has further compounded any chances of quelling these protests or addressing the situation in a holistic manner. So any government will have to continue to try and stop the carnage that is happening or the arson or anything that takes place there. That is normal for any government to do it. But when the protesters are supported by an outside power and the major power in the world, then obviously the situation gets much more complicated. Now, President Trump's statements have been that he will attack Iran, but he has to also take into account the statements and the information shared by the various Gulf countries, who are their strategic partners, who will be in the direct line of fire should the war escalate between the US and Iran or Israel in that matter. So I think that will destabilize the whole region. I mean, there's no doubt about it, and it will be very difficult to address that issue. Trump also has the possibility of trying to order a blockade, and what I just learned is that he has asked the staffers and everybody else to vacate their biggest airbase, Al Udeid base, because Iran has said that they will use the preemptive strikes on the bases. And most of these bases are located in the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and others. So we are looking at a very, very messy situation if a military escalation begins. But at the same time, the regime also doesn't have very many options, because in these kind of situations, it is not easy to address the very basic and fundamental issue, like the economic condition, which has been deteriorating further every day because of the wide-ranging sanctions for the last 4 decades. On the Iranians. So that is something there. Now, it is, even if they do something, that will have time to settle down. The only situation in which I believe you can see some regime change or whatever is possible only if the revolutionary guards, the Basijis, the police, and the army, if they abdicate the Khamenei regime.
Sure. Let me take that across to Ms. Anju Gupta as well. Ms. Gupta, that, of course, is one dynamic at play as to what Donald Trump chooses to do with this exercise going forward. But speaking about the situation on the ground, there are reports coming in of thousands of deaths. Even more people have been detained. There are images coming out of Tehran. What I want to ask, however, is that the last 48 hours have seen a quelling of the protesters wherein there are not as many people on the streets demonstrating. What does that indicate? Have the protests run out of momentum, or has the regime perhaps been more careful in exercising control over the demonstrators?
Uh, Thank you for having me on the show. Good evening to all. Yes, we have seen coming down in over the last 2 days, and if you recall, on the 12th, very massive pro-government rallies we have seen around, which were led by none other than the president himself, and which kind of tells you that there is a large constituency of people in Iran who want reforms and not regime change. I think that's a simplistic understanding that one can actually draw from this. This is one. Second, this protest has been going on since December 28th. And initially, there was a lot of violence, there were brutal suppression, internet was cut off. But we've seen that gradually the regime and the powers that be, they have kind of mustered enough support for these rallies. And today, through diplomatic channels, some of the embassies, the Iranian embassies, have circulated a note to their host countries in which they've kind of explained what has happened. And it's very interesting. In the end, they said that they've talked about foreign interference, named US, named Israel, but they've said the people of Iran are fully capable of addressing the issues that they face through their national institutions and through legal mechanisms. It's a very important political signaling,
Right.
domestically, whereby they have signaled to people that they are going to be on board and their concerns will be addressed. It might be a long haul, but it's a very important signal. They are not saying that Khamenei-led government is fully capable. They're not saying that Iranian government is capable. They said Iranian people are capable. To me, that's a very important signal.
Sure. Let's take it a step ahead into what that translates into for New Delhi. Mr. Trigunath, let me come to you. While this regime is facing an ouster at the hands of the local protesters, what I want to ask is that this is a regime with which India has significant diplomatic leverage and capital. A significant amount of investments have also been made in the region. Looking ahead at the Indian relationship with the existing regime, how does New Delhi now navigate this with Donald Trump coming down heavily on Tehran?
Well, in the first place, India has always opposed the military intervention, external intervention by any country. It has repeatedly been done. But at the same time, President Trump is very unique, and even his predecessors have done it. I was ambassador in Libya when they went ahead and did it. We know about Iraq, what happened, what is happening in Venezuela. So unilateralism has become the major foreign policy instrument for the current administration in the US. So they can do anything. But at the same time, they are not alone because they have a lot of interests in the Middle East. And all the major partners of the United States are also telling them not to go ahead and do it. As far as India is concerned, I'm quite sure yesterday our foreign minister spoke to Mr. Secretary of State Rubio and would have expressed our concern to them also, because we will have a direct impact of this in case it escalates. That's why India has always been working towards security and stability of the region. We have about 9.5 million Indians in the region. So if the missiles just go around, here and there could be many people who would be in the line of fire in different countries, as the Iranians are saying that they will start hitting at the American targets. So nobody would be safe in that region, plus energy security, plus economic engagement, plus your navigation would have a maritime navigation will have a major problem. So India obviously is concerned about the developments. And I think generally we hope that these will be settled. And secondly, President Trump has also told India, not told India, rather, that 25% of additional tariffs for the countries that are trading with Iran. Now, India also happens to be one of those, even though our bilateral trade is limited. So it will have a direct impact, and I'm quite sure that we are conveying the right messaging to the Iranians and to the Americans.
Right. Ms. Anju Gupta, let me come to you. In terms of options that the US can exercise, there's a saying that's now doing the rounds in newsrooms and at the policy circles within the United States that there's a saying in the south of the United States that a double kick of the mule sometimes is required for a good education. What I want to ask is that the first kick, which is the military strikes that we saw via the B-2 bombers, was done by way of executive action. Now, can the US realistically take executive action in the form of military steps against Tehran, or will it now need perhaps sanction from the US Congress for any step forwards? To draw a parallel, the invasion of Iraq required the approval of US Congress. No such approval has come as of right now against Tehran.
Well, the situation with Iraq was very different. The Middle East today is very different. And my assessment is that this talk, the threat about military strike is more of a rhetoric. It's not possible to carry out Venezuela type of attacks in Iran. I hope not, because Iran is no Venezuela and the situation is also very different. And my assessment is that, yes, kinetic strikes may take place, but they could be largely symbolic and not of consequence in terms of affecting a regime change. I think this rhetoric is more aimed at emboldening the protesters. And also it's a kind of a psychological signaling to the Iranian regime with which America wants some kind of an understanding on nuclear program and the missile program. That's their main priority. Their priority is not what's happening inside Iran. So let's get that very clear. Other kind of non-kinetic actions, yes, very much. Tariff to begin with, cyber attacks, other kind of measures they might take, US might take, which might affect the economy even more adversely. And when the economy gets impacted more adversely, that is where the Iranian regime will be deeper problem. So I see it going in that direction and not really a military strike.
Sure. So multiple options available both in the hands of Tehran as well as Washington. We all have to see how this plays out. The last 48 hours, however, have been a relatively quiet period in Tehran, in neighborhoods of Iran. We'll, of course, have to see how this all unpacks in the days to come. I'd like to thank both of our panelists, Mr. Trigunath, Ms. Gupta, for joining us, sharing their insight. But with that, it's time for heading into a very short break. But don't go anywhere. We get you conversations with Santosh Iyer, CEO of Mercedes-Benz India, and Eli Malouf, the CEO of Intercontinental Hotels Group.